Little girl asks Melania Trump about God, her response makes her cry. It was a warm afternoon at the children's hospital, and the air was filled with a strange mix of joy and anticipation. The halls were decorated with balloons and streamers, their vibrant colors bringing a little brightness to an otherwise difficult place. Staff members bustled around, smiling warmly at the young patients as they prepared for the special guest's arrival. Melania Trump, dressed elegantly in a soft cream suit, walked through the hallway with grace and calm. She was here on a mission, not to deliver speeches or address the press, but to meet the children who had been waiting eagerly for her visit. Her presence was calm yet comforting, and she had always believed in the power of a kind word and a warm smile to make a difference. The playroom was filled with the sound of children laughing, their faces lighting up the moment Melania stepped inside. She greeted each child with genuine warmth, kneeling to their level and listening intently to their stories. Some showed her their drawings, others proudly introduced her to their favorite stuffed animals. Then, Melania noticed a little girl standing off to the side, clutching a worn teddy bear tightly against her chest. The girl's big brown eyes were filled with a mixture of awe and shyness as she watched the First Lady from a distance. Melania gave her a warm smile and slowly walked over. "Hello, sweetheart," she said gently, kneeling down to meet the girl's gaze. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated for a moment, then whispered, "Lily." Melania nodded, her smile never wavering. "It's very nice to meet you, Lily. Is this your bear?" she asked, gesturing to the stuffed toy in the girl's arms. Lily nodded, her grip tightening on the bear. "His name is Teddy. He looks like a very good friend," Melania said. "May I sit with you for a moment?" Lily nodded again, and Melania sat on the small bench beside her. For a moment, there was silence, the kind that spoke louder than words. Melania could tell that Lily had something on her mind, something important, but the little girl didn't quite know how to say it. Finally, Lily took a deep breath and looked up at Melania with wide, innocent eyes. "Do you know about God?" she asked softly. Melania blinked, surprised by the question but deeply moved by its sincerity. "Yes," she said gently. "I do." Lily's lower lip quivered, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Is he real?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Can he hear me when I talk to him?" Melania felt her heart tighten at the little girl's words. She reached out, gently taking Lily's hand in hers. "Yes, Lily," she said, her voice filled with warmth and certainty. "God is very real. And he hears every word you say. He's always listening." Tears slipped down Lily's cheeks, and she sniffled quietly. "I prayed for my mommy to get better," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But she didn't. Does that mean he didn't hear me?" Melania's eyes softened, and she leaned in closer, her voice steady and soothing. "Oh, sweet girl," she said, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Sometimes, when we pray, we don't always get the answer we hope for. But that doesn't mean God didn't hear you. He hears every prayer, and he loves you very much." Lily looked up at her, searching her face for the truth in her words. "But why didn't he help my mommy?" she asked, her tears falling freely now. "I miss her so much." Melania took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the little girl's question. "I don't have all the answers," she admitted softly. "But I believe that your mommy is still with you, in your heart and in all the beautiful memories you have of her. And I believe that God sent you angels to watch over you, even when it feels like you're all alone." Lily wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her tiny shoulders trembling. "You really think so?" "I do," Melania said with a tender smile. "And I think your mommy would be so proud of how brave and strong you are." Lily's eyes filled with hope, and for the first time since the conversation started, she smiled, a small, fragile smile, but one filled with trust. "Thank you," she whispered, hugging her bear tightly. Melania leaned down and kissed the top of her head. "You're never alone, Lily. Never forget that." For a few moments, they sat in silence, the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. Then, slowly, Lily reached out and wrapped her arms around Melania, holding her tightly. Melania returned the hug, her own eyes glistening with tears she wouldn't let fall. The staff watched from a distance, their hearts touched by the quiet, beautiful exchange. It was moments like these that reminded them why they did what they did, why kindness and compassion mattered so much. When Lily finally pulled back, her eyes were still red, but there was a new light in them, a spark of comfort, a belief that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. "Will you come back and visit again?" she asked, her voice hopeful. Melania smiled. "I promise I will." Lily nodded, satisfied, and held her bear a little closer. "I'll be waiting." As Melania stood to leave, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. There were always bigger stages, more cameras, louder platforms, but none of it compared to the quiet power of moments like this. Of reminding a little girl that she wasn't alone. Of planting a seed of hope in a heart that needed it most. And as she walked down the hall, her heels clicking softly against the floor, she whispered a silent prayer of her own. For Lily, for all the children here, and for the strength to keep doing what truly mattered. Melania walked down the corridor with a serene smile, her heart still touched by her conversation with Lily. The hospital's halls felt warmer somehow, as though the little girl's words had left an invisible glow in the air. The encounter reminded her of something important, that true connection didn't come from grand gestures but from listening, from being present in the quiet moments that mattered most. Her security detail followed a respectful distance behind, understanding that this was no ordinary visit. Melania always preferred to blend in rather than dominate the space. She stopped to greet more children along the way, each face lighting up as they recognized her. In one of the rooms, a boy named Sam waved her over eagerly. His face was pale, and dark circles framed his eyes, but his energy was unshakable. On the bed beside him lay an impressive stack of drawings, each one more colorful than the last. "Mrs. Trump," he called out. "Come see my drawings." Melania stepped into the room, her eyes brightening at the sight of his artwork. "Wow, Sam. These are beautiful. Did you draw all of these?" Sam nodded proudly. "Yeah. This one is a rocket ship, and this one is a dragon." He held up a particularly colorful picture of what looked like a spaceship soaring through a galaxy filled with stars. "One day, I'm gonna be an astronaut and fly to the moon." Melania smiled, kneeling beside his bed. "I believe you will. You have a wonderful imagination, Sam. Keep drawing and dreaming. You never know how far it will take you." Sam grinned, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Do you think God hears my dreams too?" Melania paused, touched by the question. It was similar to what Lily had asked earlier, and she felt the weight of its importance. "Yes, Sam," she said gently. "I believe God listens to everything in your heart, your dreams, your hopes, and even your fears. He's always there, watching over you and cheering you on." Sam beamed, holding the picture out to her. "Here, you can have this one, so you don't forget." Melania accepted the drawing with a warm smile. "Thank you, Sam. I'll treasure it." As she left the room, she folded the drawing carefully, holding it close. Every child she met left an imprint on her heart, a reminder that there was always more work to do, more lives to touch. Her position gave her the unique privilege of bringing light into places often overshadowed by hardship, and she intended to use it in every way she could. In the lobby, a small crowd had gathered, parents, children, and staff waiting for a chance to speak with her. Melania made her way toward them, taking her time with each conversation. The questions ranged from simple greetings to deeply personal stories of struggle and hope. She listened with unwavering attention, offering comfort where she could, and gentle words of encouragement when they needed it most. A mother approached, holding the hand of her young daughter. Her eyes were filled with gratitude. "Mrs. Trump," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "thank you for being here. My daughter, Ava, has been in and out of this hospital for the past year. Seeing you today means more than I can put into words." Melania knelt beside Ava, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Hello, Ava. You're very brave, you know that?" Ava nodded shyly, hiding her face behind her mother's leg. Melania chuckled softly. "I'm so happy to meet you. Stay strong and remember, you have so many people who love you and believe in you." Ava peeked out, a small smile forming on her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. The mother wiped a tear from her eye. "You've given her something to hold on to. We'll never forget this." Melania gently squeezed Ava's hand. "You'll be in my thoughts and prayers." The visit drew to a close, but the impact lingered. As Melania made her way toward the exit, she caught sight of Lily once again, standing with one of the nurses. The little girl waved enthusiastically, her teddy bear clutched tightly in her arms. Melania waved back, her heart swelling with a mixture of joy and bittersweet emotion. Moments like these were rare, but they were the reason she continued to visit hospitals and shelters, to bring hope where it was needed most. As she stepped outside, the late afternoon sun bathed the city in a warm glow. Reporters gathered at a respectful distance, cameras clicking as she descended the hospital steps. But Melania paid them little attention. Her mind was still with the children inside, their voices, their dreams, their unspoken prayers. In the back of the car, she unfolded Sam's drawing once more, running her fingers over the crayon lines. It was a simple picture, but it carried so much meaning. It was a reminder that hope could be found even in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes, all a child needed was a little encouragement to believe in something greater than themselves. That evening, Melania sat in her office, reflecting on the day. Her assistant knocked gently before stepping inside. "Mrs. Trump, would you like me to prepare a statement about today's visit?" she asked. Melania thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, thank you. Some moments are meant to be kept close to the heart." Her assistant nodded and left the room, leaving Melania alone with her thoughts. She closed her eyes, picturing Lily's tearful question, Sam's bright smile, and Ava's shy wave. Each moment was a story in itself, a story of resilience, faith, and the unbreakable spirit of children who refuse to give up. Melania reached for a notepad and began to write, her words flowing easily. It wasn't a speech or a formal address, it was a personal note, a letter she would carry with her in the days to come. A reminder to herself of why she did what she did. To every child who feels unseen or unheard, you are not alone. Your dreams matter, your prayers are heard, and you are loved more than you know. She folded the note and tucked it into her journal, her heart lighter than it had been in a long time. The world was often unpredictable and chaotic, but small acts of kindness could create ripples far beyond what anyone imagined. And sometimes, a simple conversation about God and dreams could change everything. Melania sat quietly in her office, the soft hum of the city outside filtering in through the windows. The day's events still played vividly in her mind: Lily's tear-streaked face, Sam's excitement about becoming an astronaut, Ava's shy but brave smile. Every one of those children had touched her heart in a profound way. She ran her fingers over the folded note she had written earlier, reflecting on the weight of their questions and the trust they had placed in her. It wasn't every day that children spoke so openly about their deepest fears and dreams. And it wasn't lost on her how much they needed reassurance, not just from their families but from anyone willing to listen and care. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Her assistant stepped in, holding a tablet. "Mrs. Trump, there are several messages from the hospital staff. They wanted to thank you for today's visit. Many of the parents also reached out. Would you like me to read them?" Melania smiled, nodding. "Please." Her assistant read the first message. "Dear Mrs. Trump, thank you for spending time with my daughter, Lily. You gave her something no one else could, hope. She hasn't stopped talking about you since you left." For the first time in weeks, she smiled, truly smiled. "You reminded her that she's not alone, and for that, I'll be forever grateful." Melania closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the words. It was one thing to be in the moment, offering comfort and kindness, but hearing how much it had meant afterward made her even more determined to continue her work. The assistant continued. "Another message from the hospital director. Your presence today brought light to some of the darkest corners of our facility. The children felt seen, heard, and loved, and that is something we can never thank you enough for." Melania listened quietly, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "Please send my thanks and tell them it was my honor to be there." Her assistant nodded, excusing herself. The door clicked shut, leaving Melania alone once again. She turned to the window, gazing out at the city lights. There was so much work to be done, so many children who needed that same light. The world could be a harsh place, but she firmly believed that kindness could cut through the darkness. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of small footsteps outside the office. She looked up to see her son, Baron, standing in the doorway, a curious expression on his face. "Mom, I heard you were at the hospital today," he said, stepping inside. "How did it go?" Melania's face softened as she gestured for him to sit beside her. "It was emotional," she admitted. "I met some incredible children. Brave, strong, and full of hope, even in the most difficult circumstances." Baron tilted his head, thoughtful. "Were they scared?" "Some were," Melania said honestly. "But they were also filled with questions. About God, about why things happen the way they do. They're just like you and me. They want to know that someone is listening, that someone cares." Baron leaned back in the chair, processing her words. "It must be hard for them, not knowing what's going to happen." "It is," Melania agreed. "But even in their hardest moments, they find ways to smile, to dream. That's what amazed me the most. They never stop believing." Baron looked down at his hands, then back at his mother. "I think it's cool that you go there. You make them feel like they're not alone." Melania reached out, placing her hand over his. "Thank you, Baron. You know, you can make a difference too. Sometimes just being kind, listening, or standing up for someone can change their whole world." Baron nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "Maybe I'll go with you next time." "I want to meet them." Melania smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I'd love that. I think they would too." Later that evening, the house was quiet. Baron had gone to bed, and Melania sat in the living room with a cup of tea, the soft glow of a nearby lamp casting a warm light. She scrolled through her phone, reading updates from the hospital and looking at photos from the visit. Each child's face reminded her of how fleeting and fragile life could be, but also how resilient the human spirit was. She paused on a photo of herself and Lily, the little girl's tear-streaked face gazing up at her with trust and hope. A wave of emotion washed over her, and for a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of it all. The sadness, the hope, the responsibility. It was overwhelming, but it was also what drove her. Her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Lily's mother again. "Mrs. Trump, I just wanted to tell you one more thing. Tonight, before bed, Lily prayed for the first time in months. She asked God to watch over you, just like you told her he was watching over her. I don't know how to thank you for giving her that back." Melania blinked back tears, her throat tightening. She typed a simple response. "Tell Lily she is in my prayers too. She is stronger than she knows." She set her phone down, staring at the message for a moment before leaning back into the couch. The quiet enveloped her, but it wasn't a lonely quiet, it was a peaceful one, filled with the echoes of laughter, whispered prayers, and the promise of brighter days ahead. Melania closed her eyes, feeling a sense of calm settle over her. She knew there would be more questions, more difficult moments, and more hearts to touch. But for tonight, she let herself rest, holding on to the knowledge that sometimes, all it took was one conversation to change everything. The house was quiet, bathed in the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the windows. Melania rested on the couch, lost in thought, still reflecting on the day at the hospital. Her heart felt full but heavy at the same time. For every child she had comforted, there were countless others facing similar struggles, waiting for someone to listen, someone to care. The silence was interrupted by the soft patter of footsteps. Baron entered the living room, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Mom," he said, his voice low. "Are you still awake?" Melania smiled and patted the seat beside her. "Yes, sweetheart. Couldn't sleep?" Baron shook his head and sat next to her. "I was thinking about what you said earlier. About how just listening or being kind can make a big difference." He hesitated for a moment, then added, "There's a boy at my school, Lucas. He sits alone at lunch every day. I've been meaning to talk to him, but I guess I was afraid he wouldn't want to be bothered." Melania's expression softened. Sometimes, the people who seem like they want to be left alone are the ones who need a friend the most. Maybe Lucas is just waiting for someone like you to reach out? Baron nodded slowly. "I'll talk to him tomorrow. See if he wants to sit with me." Melania squeezed his hand. "That's a wonderful idea. I'm so proud of you, Baron." He smiled, a little sleepily this time. "Good night, Mum." "Good night, my love," Melania whispered, watching him disappear back down the hallway. The next morning, Melania woke early, feeling renewed and energized. She went through her usual routine, but her mind remained on the children from the hospital and the many stories they had shared. It was clear that she needed to do more, something that would create lasting change and offer ongoing support to these children and their families. Sitting at her desk, she began to sketch out an idea, her pen moving swiftly across the notepad. A foundation, she thought, one focused on offering emotional and spiritual support to children in hospitals and underserved communities. A place where they could talk openly about their fears and dreams, where they could find hope and connection. She picked up the phone and called her assistant. "I have an idea," she said. "Let's schedule a meeting with some of the best child psychologists and hospital directors in the city. I want to create something lasting, something that helps these children beyond just a single visit." Her assistant responded with enthusiasm. "Of course, Mrs. Trump. I'll arrange it immediately." Melania hung up, feeling a surge of purpose. This was it, her next step. A way to make sure that no child felt forgotten or unheard. A few days later, the conference room at the hospital was filled with professionals from various fields, doctors, therapists, teachers, and volunteers, all eager to hear about Melania's vision. She stood at the front, her calm and poised demeanor commanding their attention. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady. "During my recent visits to hospitals, I've met many children who are struggling, not just physically, but emotionally. They have questions they're afraid to ask, fears they don't know how to express, and dreams they need encouragement to pursue." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I want to create a foundation that offers these children a safe space. A place where they can speak freely, where they can receive emotional and spiritual guidance, and where they can be reminded that they are never alone." The room was silent for a moment, then a wave of nods and murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. One of the doctors raised his hand. "Mrs. Trump, I think this is a brilliant idea. There's such a need for this kind of support, especially for children who feel isolated during their treatment. I'd be honored to help." "Thank you," Melania said, her smile warm. "With your expertise and the support of our community, I believe we can make a real difference." The days that followed were a whirlwind of planning and coordination. Melania worked tirelessly, meeting with experts, drafting plans, and securing funding. The foundation began to take shape, a network of volunteers and professionals dedicated to supporting children in need, providing everything from counseling sessions to creative workshops that encouraged self-expression. Word of the initiative spread quickly, drawing attention from media outlets and philanthropists eager to contribute. But for Melania, the real success wasn't in the headlines. It was in the letters and messages she received from families who had already benefited from the foundation's early programs. One letter, in particular, stood out. It was from Lily's mother. "Dear Mrs. Trump, I wanted to thank you once again for everything you've done for Lily. Since your visit, she's been a different child, more confident, more hopeful. She talks about you often and tells everyone that you taught her to believe again. Yesterday, she said something that brought tears to my eyes. 'Mommy, I'm not afraid anymore. I know God is watching over us.' Thank you for giving her that peace. You've changed our lives." Melania read the letter twice, her heart swelling with emotion. It was moments like this that reminded her why she had taken on this mission, why she would continue to fight for these children, to be their voice and their advocate. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her journal, right beside Sam's drawing. These mementos were more than just keepsakes. They were symbols of hope, proof that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple outward and change lives. A few weeks later, Melania returned to the hospital for the official launch of the foundation. The playroom was once again filled with children and their families, the air buzzing with excitement. Balloons and banners decorated the space, and volunteers handed out art supplies and toys. Lily was there, her teddy bear still tucked under her arm. When she saw Melania, her face lit up, and she ran over, wrapping her arms around her. "You came back," Lily said, beaming. "I promised I would," Melania replied, kneeling to hug her back. "How have you been?" "Really good," Lily said. "Guess what? I'm not scared anymore. Melania smiled, her eyes misty. I'm so proud of you, Lily. The rest of the afternoon passed in a joyful blur. Children laughing, parents relaxing for the first time in what felt like forever. Melania moved through the crowd, talking to everyone, her heart full with the knowledge that this was just the beginning. As the sun set outside, casting a warm glow over the city, Melania stood by the window, watching the children play. This was her purpose, her calling. To bring light into the darkness, to give children like Lily the hope and strength they needed to keep going. And in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that they would never walk this journey alone, not as long as she was there to walk it with them.